Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, the Zodiac Killer, Special Officer Doofy, these prolific killers have become part of our popular culture. We make movies, TV shows and documentaries about them, not to mention all the true crime YouTube channels. Most big stories have been chewed out and recycled a million times. You've seen it all.
I was saving body parts.
But I bet you haven't seen this one yet. That's right, I'm penetrating into a new market. Tony, true crime only. Okay, I actually shouldn't be laughing. This is a real story and it's absolutely insane. So strap in and...
This is one of the things that I wish a lot more YouTubers would do. There's probably a lot of them that already does it out there, but don't have the recognition or the fame yet. Where they tell a lot of stories from Asia that necessarily doesn't penetrate like mainstream news over here in the West about like this absolutely abysmal like situations like serial killers and whatnot, right? I love the fact that he's doing this.
Armed with a double-barrel shotgun, he transformed a remote mountain community in Shanxi province into a scene of one of China's deadliest killing sprees. 14 people killed, 3 injured, all in one night. His motivation? Justice. This is the story of Hu Wenhai.
Okay.
Seeds of resentment. In the shadow of China's economic reforms, rural communities like Dayukou village struggled with the painful transition from collective to private enterprise. The village coal mine, once a communal property, became a prize for those with connections. In 1993, local hothead Hu Wenhai, a 39-year-old former miner, secured a 3-year contract to operate the Dayukou coal mine. Local CCP chief Hu Gensheng, yes, they share the same last name, which is confusing, so let's call him Comrade Johnson, wielding considerable regional power, quietly extended Hu's contract for 2 additional years without the required public bidding process. While villagers survived on meager farming incomes, Hu's fortune multiplied. His
This dude just this dude just bamboozled him, huh? Unfortunately, this is a very common theme where rural areas, when they're about to like transition into privatized, the privatized corporate world, this is what they do. They do exactly this because no one is smart enough to even talk back to them or even understand what is going on.
modest brick home transformed into a 2-story compound. 5 years passed, and by early 1998, as China's anti-corruption campaigns intensified on paper but remained toothless in practice, village officials initiated a public tender for the mine. When other villages offered substantially higher bids, officials rejected Hu's insistence on renewing at his original price. The loss of his primary income source planted the first dark seed of resentment toward those he believed had betrayed him, particularly former local CCP chief Comrade Johnson. Keep in mind that to this very day, the term Mei Laoban, literally coal boss, is still the ultimate word to describe a person with ridiculous amounts of wealth. So that is what's at stake here for our killer. From rags to riches, back to rags. The incident.
So, right. Who is this? This is Ranton. An amazing YouTube content creator. He does a lot of different stuff. But he has side quests like this every now and then where he does like stories from China, which is incredible. LKS, thank you for the follow, man. What was I saying? Yeah. We have like different expressions for people that have a lot of money, right? But I've never heard someone being called a coal boss to express wealth. Like I'm trying to think of the Japanese and Korean ones. I can't remember them right now, but coal boss is wild. Oil baron? Exactly. Like we have similar thing, but like coal, I don't know about coal, you know?
Riots in rural China have triggered violence for centuries. In drought-prone Shanxi province, access to irrigation could mean the difference between survival and starvation, especially to a recent fall from grace, Hu Wenhai. On June 19th, 1999, Hu confronted 2 brothers, let's call them the Shovel Bros, over their diversion of water from his fields. Words escalated to shoves, then to weapons. As neighbors watched from a distance, too afraid to intervene, the Shovel Bros stuck Hu with an iron shovel, leaving him unconscious in a pool of blood among the dusty furrows. If it wasn't for Hu's father and brother who came for the rescue, he would have died that day.
So let me get this straight. He got bamboozled out of the contract, went and tried to get courtly justice, got denied. They're taking his water, and they stabbed the man and just left him to die.
At the district hospital, doctors inserted 12 stitches into Hu's fractured skull. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, a conviction formed in his mind. This was no simple dispute, but an assassination attempt orchestrated by village officials to silence him permanently. That same night, the Shovel brothers fled Dayuko village, abandoning their home and possessions, in what looks like a clear admission of guilt, though others whispered that powerful figures had arranged their escape. 2 days later, with his head still bandaged, Hu returned home to find Comrade Johnson at his door. He claimed that another higher-up, let's call him Bossman Lee, had sent him to mediate, offering over 20,000 yuan as compensation, an enormous sum in rural China for that time, where the average annual income barely even reached 2,000. But instead of gratitude, Hu felt confirmation of his darkest suspicions.
Yeah,
why would officials offer him such an insane sum of money unless they feared what he might reveal? The planning. For months after the attack, Hu's behavior grew increasingly erratic. When one of the Shovel brothers briefly returned to collect his possessions, Hu captured and beat him repeatedly, demanding
He captured the dude and beat him repeatedly. My man just grabbed him and waterboarded the shit out of this guy.
he revealed who had orchestrated the attack. Each denial only reinforced Hu's paranoia and resentment. He was already convinced of a conspiracy. He felt it was time to strike.
Wow. Okay.
In the surveillance
So because, you see, he just plunged into paranoia. Whereas, they're probably going to kill me first, and this is all a conspiracy. They're going to come after my wealth and all of that shit. He was not going to let go of that paranoia, no matter what would have transpired in these type of scenarios. I think it would have just spiraled even worse. And I think there's any form of, like, salvation in this scenario. I think every single possible outcome would have been bad in this. He was like, what?
In the surveillance system that permeates Chinese society, Hu Wenhai managed to operate in shadows. He purchased fake identification cards from underground networks, a serious crime in China's tightly controlled system. He acquired a fire axe from a forestry equipment supplier, telling them it was for clearing mountain land. And most ominously, Hu obtained 3.7 kilograms of explosives and 5 detonators from Liu Haiwang, a former mining colleague, and let's call him Accomplice Howard. You should be happy, by the way, that I'm replacing all the names with Western names. I know most of y'all aren't Chinese, and you will just get confused, okay? So,
That is so real. If you would have stuck with the original names, I would not have followed. Just keeping it real, I would not have followed. He is 100% correct.
In a country where possession of explosives typically carry extreme sentences from 3 years prison to the death penalty, this transaction alone demonstrated the depth of his determination.
Wait.
Transaction.
Fixed term imprisonment 3 to 10 years. If the circumstances are serious, the sentence will be over 10 years, life imprisonment, or death penalty. This is way more than serious, bro. He has bombs, detonators, other guns, and axes, fake IDs. This is either death penalty or imprisonment.
Alone demonstrated the depth of his determination.
Hello, Alvin.
By day, Hu transformed himself into
Wait! I planned to suicide by explosion when the police caught me. So let me get this straight. He already planned to be like, hey, I'm gonna get caught. And when I do, I'm just gonna snack bar myself. He wasn't really, like, mentally done. Like, he was mentally like, hey, I am going to eventually go out. That is what's happening. All right. And the video started like 5 minutes ago, so you aren't that late.
By day, Hu transformed himself into an amateur accountant and investigator. In January 2001, through connections with a sympathetic clerk, he obtained the village coal mine's payroll records from 1992 to 1993. Through meticulous analysis, he concluded village officials had embezzled approximately 5 million yuan, enough to build a school, clinic, and proper roads for the entire community. As he revealed,
imagine the annual income is like 2,000 yuan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing the currency correct. Sorry if I don't. 2,000 yuan. What did he say? 5 million yuan?
5 million yuan, enough
5 million yuan. That's an unfathomable. Oh my god. Imagine you make 2,000 a year and he embezzled 5 million. I'd be beyond pissed, man.
to build a school, clinic, and proper roads for the entire community. As he revealed this web of corruption, he saw his suspicions confirmed yet again and realized that there might be a less bloody way to seek revenge. But petitioning against corruption follows very specific protocols in China's rigid bureaucracy. Hu collected signatures from 121 villagers, nearly every adult in Dayukou, and began a carefully documented campaign. For 8 grueling months, he traveled to government offices at township, district, city, and provincial levels carrying thick binders of evidence. A pattern started to repeat with soul-crushing predictability. At each level, officials recorded his complaints, stamped his papers, and redirected him downwards to the very authorities he accused. "We lack the funds for such an investigation," they told him. "We have insufficient personnel. These matters are complicated." As his options narrowed,
you know those type of stories where you sit and listen and you kind of low-key be like, yeah, I understand why he became the way he is, and I kind of feel for him. This part of the story, I'm 100% behind this dude. He has every right to turn out the way he just did, as of right now. I'm not saying the thing he did was correct, but he did everything by the book. It's not like he went out and got like, 50% of the village or like 80%. He got 100% signatures.
And his hatred deepened, Hu started to think that those he was reporting were planning their own retaliation. In a system where whistleblowers often disappear into detention centers or psychiatric hospitals, his fear wasn't entirely irrational. Hu Wenhai, once an ordinary villager seeking justice, began plotting one of the deadliest massacres in modern Chinese history. The methodical planning that followed would shock even hardened investigators.
他一旦自己想追求的目标、自己想达到的目的达不到的时候，那么他的性格、心理就发生了裂变。
This is 2011, man.
As dusk settled over Dayukou village, Hu set his plan in motion. The rural side
I was in Japan 2011. I was in Japan 2011, man. None of the news reached us there.
Silence was broken only by dogs barking and the distant clanging of cooking pots as families prepared evening meals, unaware of the horror about to unfold. At 7 p.m., Hu enlisted Howard, the man who provided him the explosives from before, to lure the former village official, Comrade Johnson, to Hu's home under the pretense of resolving their long-standing disputes. In rural Chinese communities, such evening mediations are common practice, typically ending with a shared cigarette and mutual compromise. Not this time. Compromise was not on Hu's agenda. He had positioned his younger brother in an adjacent room, a silent witness and accomplice to what would follow. As Comrade Johnson crossed the threshold into Hu's dimly lit home, the atmosphere immediately shifted. Hu Wenhai seized the official's belt and mobile phone, cutting off his connection to the outside world. With cold precision, he demanded Comrade Johnson write a confession, admitting to the embezzlement and orchestrating the shovel attack 2 years earlier. When Comrade Johnson refused, Hu escalated. He forced the trembling Johnson to call the coal mine's accountant, claiming an urgent meeting was needed. In Chinese social hierarchy, refusing a superior summon is unthinkable, so he arrived within minutes. By 9:40 p.m., Hu's patience evaporated. There was still no confession. With Howard flanking him, he retrieved a double-barrel shotgun, marching the 2 officials outside toward the village outskirts where a maze of abandoned mine shafts could swallow bodies without a trace. A distant wail of a police siren, likely unrelated, triggered a panic. The accountant, sensing his impending execution, made a desperate gambit. He pointed to his own forehead and challenged Hu. "You have the guts to shoot here?" What works in movies doesn't always in real life. This challenge to Hu's manhood proved fatal. Without hesitation, Hu fired directly into his face. The shot
It is so horrible to laugh at this. But he's like, yeah, you're a man, shoot right here. And he was like, all right, say less. Pow! Fuck!
shotgun blast echoing across the village. Comrade Johnson seized the opportunity and lunged for the weapon, triggering Hu's prepared command. Howard, chop him with the axe. Howard's fire axe struck Comrade Johnson twice, once in the head, once in the shoulder, before Hu fired a shotgun blast at his torso. Through sheer luck or just his body's state of shock, Comrade Johnson survived by playing dead among the splatter of his colleagues' remains. Hu then handed Howard 1,000 yuan, about 3 months' rural salary, who then disposed of the blood-soaked axe in a nearby apple orchard before disappearing into the darkness.
The dude got stabbed in the head and the shoulder and got shot in the torso with a fucking shotgun. And still had the fucking composure to play dead.
By 10 p.m., armed with a shotgun and 50 to 60 rounds of ammunition, enough to eliminate a small village, Hu began a methodical procession of death through Daiyuko's narrow alleys. In the countryside of China, where homes cluster closely with paper-thin walls, each shotgun blast would have echoed like thunder, yet no alarm was raised. His first target was the village bookkeeper. He knocked on the door. The bookkeeper's wife opened. Hu blasted around directly into her face without a word. Hearing her daughter's screams inside, he calmly reloaded and shot the young woman as well. Both died instantly. Collateral damage in Hu's vendetta. He then approached the Shovel Brothers' home, the men who he wanted to kill for the last 2 years. He has mentally rehearsed this journey dozens of times. Finding the door locked, Hu smashed a window with his gun barrel and fired at a silhouette inside. The man fell moaning in pain. Hu fired again. The moaning fell silent. At the former mayor's small store, he fired 2 shots at the old man's head in his sleep, killing him instantly. He then turned his weapon on the wife, firing twice.
踹开门，我进去，我一看我父亲啊，这已经就头已经就成了半个了。我妈是红成是血。
In an act of extraordinary defiance and bravery, the severely wounded old woman managed to dip her fingers in her own blood and scrawl "Wanhai on the wall before losing consciousness, her final testimony against the killer. The rampage continued at another.
That is aura. That is... Because you have to imagine, they don't have any, like, no camera. Nothing. Like, he could have gone and just pow, 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 just shot people. Unless there's someone alive to tell the tale or someone hides, they would have never known who did it. And she probably knew, and she just scribbled on the wall.
Innocent household. This time a complete nobody. The best guess people have in retrospect for the killing here is that they occupied a spot of Hu's farmland. So what did he do? A shotgun blast to the unsuspecting man's back. Then he killed the wife with 2 shots as she tried to escape. With clinical precision, he fired another shot at the head of the already downed man to ensure no witnesses remained. And if all of that wasn't enough, he then stopped by at one of his own relatives. A home that was a small gathering place where neighbors often shared evening tea. He murdered 4 people in rapid succession. The man of the house, the wife, and 2 random unlucky visitors whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And why on earth did Hu kill his own relatives? The only thing people could think of afterwards is that they didn't give him enough wedding gifts way back when. But that is only speculation. When he finally approached one of the village officials' homes, this was a big target Hu labeled as
I'm not gonna zoom past that comment. Excuse me?
relatives. The only thing people could think of afterwards is that they didn't give him enough wedding gifts way back when. But that is only speculation. When he
You know what's so weird about this? Is that if you say this to any Western world country, they'll be like, what are you talking about? But if you say this in the Eastern countries, especially towards like Middle East and Balkan and Asian countries, that unfortunately makes a lot of sense. But imagine holding that level of grudge against people. They'd be like, hey, you're the uncle who showed up, but you didn't give us enough money, or you didn't give us a wedding gift. And then you just bow.
finally approached one of the village officials' homes, this was a big target who labeled as corrupt in his filings. His luck would finally turn around for a moment. Despite being shot twice, the guy managed to scale a courtyard wall and escape into the darkness. The massacre's sole escapee, besides Comrade Johnson. And his last destination was Bossman Lee's larger home, a symbol of privilege in the impoverished village. There, he executed Lee, his wife, and their daughter. Only Lee's son survived. There's no documentation on how, but highly likely from hiding somewhere as his family members were being killed. By 12:30 a.m., after just 2.5 hours, Hu had attacked 17 people across 11 households. His victims ranged from innocent 11-year-old children to 71-year-old elders, a cross-section of a community that would never recover from this night
He
of
just
terror.
lost completely, bro.
The escape.
Fuck.
Around 1 a.m., Hu returned to his home where his accomplice brother waited anxiously. He asked, "Did you get the shovel, bros?" Revealing that even for his accomplices, this was about vengeance, not justice. Hu hid the shotgun in his blood-soaked shoes in a limestone cave behind his house. He changed into clean shoes his brother had prepared and pedaled away on a bicycle towards Taiyuan, the provincial capital some 30 kilometers away. Strapped to his body were the explosives and detonators he acquired before, not for further attacks, but to Minecraft himself in case he gets cornered and arrested. In China's justice system, his arrest is sure to mean execution.
Yeah,
this
that's
final
the death
escape
penalty.
plan shows his clear-eyed assessment of his situation. This wasn't some crazed madman. This was long-planned, premeditated mass murder. Near Taiyuan's outskirts, he abandoned his bicycle, too conspicuous for
Dude, he had planned this from like beginning to end. Having that type of mental clarity to walk into a village and just start executing people like that. If that was like an act of, hey, I'm just gonna do this because I want to do this, it would have been different. But like he already had an exit strategy, right? He had a plan where he was like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then my exit strategy is just I'm just gonna go up and smoke if life demands it of me. And what is so hard for me to imagine as well, like back then, if you have cameras everywhere like it is right now, especially in China, it's a very high surveillance type of state where you have cameras everywhere. It's gotta be hard, like getting away with things. They're watching you all the time. But was it the same in 2011? And is it the same today in like very like out in the very outskirts, like rural villages?
a city and hailed a green taxi, blending. Near Taiyuan's outskirts, he abandoned his bicycle, too conspicuous for a city, and hailed a green taxi, blending into the anonymous urban traffic of early morning workers. The capture. China's security apparatus, once activated, moves with overwhelming force. By 3 a.m., roadblocks encircle Taiyuan, checking every vehicle and pedestrian. At approximately 5 a.m., police at a checkpoint north of Taiyuan railway station, likely the escape route to neighboring provinces, detained a suspicious man matching Hu's description. Luckily, the police saw a glimpse of the explosives Hu was wearing and held him down before he could do anything with it. Imagine the adrenaline. Arresting a man with explosives strapped to his body. Oh god, you don't know what's gonna happen, bro. His accomplices, Howard and his brother, were arrested within hours as a massive police operation swept through the region. The trial. On Christmas Day, the Jinzhong Intermediate People's Court convened for what was essentially a ceremonial trial. In China's legal system, where conviction rates exceed 99.9%, the proceedings focused not on determining guilt, but measuring its dimensions and reconstructing the events. During the trial, Hu remained unrepentant. He calmly articulated his motivation. He killed to eliminate corrupt officials who betrayed public trust. When questioned about all the innocent victims, he explained that he sought to eliminate witnesses who might take revenge against his children after his execution.
我害怕的报复。
I was afraid of the children would grow up and seek revenge online.
哎，对。
Court records revealed the methodical nature of his preparation.
You know what's fucked up? Is that even in his crazed state, to have the like bastardized version of rationality to be like, hey, I'm just gonna eliminate future like potential threats in the future by just making sure that there is nothing that could possibly exist. And be like, hey, this guy's daughter or son will probably grow up and they will like have this grudge for the longest of time. I will probably not be around it, but they will probably go after my family. As fucked up as that thought is, it makes sense.
the fake IDs for escape, explosives, the fire axe, and deliberately spending his money on gambling and prostitution to leave nothing behind. In his appeal, his defense tried to portray them as vigilantes who only resorted to violence after anti-corruption channels failed. Accomplice Howard, on the other hand, presented a dramatically different narrative in his appeal. He claimed he had only struck Comrade Johnson with the axe under Hu Wenhai's coercion, positioning himself as an unwilling accessory under duress. He insisted he was guilty only of attempted murder since the victim survived. The court dismissed the appeals. In its final ruling, the court concluded that all three defendants had committed intentional homicide. Hu and Howard were sentenced to death with permanent deprivation of political rights, while the brothers' corporation earned them a life sentence. Every appeal was unanimously rejected, and the original verdicts upheld as the final judgment.
走这条路是应该，杀人偿命嘛。家里面
I'm sorry to my parents, I won't be with them in their final moments as a son should.
父母不能受罪，这对不起父母，让
I want my son to take good care of my daughter.
儿子好好照顾女儿，其他让
I
你
want my wife to find a
老
new
婆
husband
重找一
for
个
the
对
rest
象
of her life.
过好你的后半生。
On January 25th, 2002, a mere month after the sentencing, at approximately 10:30 am, Hu and Howard were led to an execution ground on the city's outskirts. In accordance with standard procedure, they would have been forced to kneel, then dispatched with a single pistol shot to the back of the head, China's preferred method for its estimated 10,000 annual executions at that time.
That's how they execute people? I thought it was like a lethal injection or something. They made him kneel and put a cap in the back of his head. What?
The Dayukou massacre faded quickly from Chinese media. Rural violence like this contradicted the CCP's narrative of a harmonious development, but it left lasting questions about justice, corruption, and desperation in China's forgotten villages. Yet, very interestingly, in the years that followed, the government quietly implemented rural anti-corruption measures and expanded petition system for grievances, a tacit acknowledgement that the seeds of whose rampage lay not just in one man's mind, but in systemic failures that continue to challenge China's rural governance to this day. The case has maintained a dark fascination in Chinese popular culture. For some, Hu Wenhai became a folk anti-hero who had confronted corruption when legitimate channels failed. But looking at the court documents and statements, we know that that's just not true. Of the 17 people he attacked, only 4 were directly related to his corruption allegations at all. The others, including women, children, elderly, visitors, had minimal or no connection to his grievances. There's a director who made a critically acclaimed movie in 2013 called A Touch of Sin that features a fictionalized version of Hu's story. In his telling, the protagonist becomes both victim and perpetrator that reinforces the continued romanticization of Hu's actions.
That is not okay. That is not okay. You're actively taking something that shouldn't be done and you're doing it. That is, nah, dude. Oh, I don't agree with that. Oh man, even the US have cooler stuff like hanging still. Cooler. Aren't they going to start executing people by firing squad in the USA? I think they're looking to China and getting a little bit inspired.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes our true crime story for tonight. I really love doing these China deep dive lore videos. Yeah, this one is pretty brutal. Don't be violent. Thanks for watching and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.
I love this dude. And what makes me a little bit sad is that Ranton right here, for some reason, has gone AWOL for so long, man. Like he just upped and disappeared 9 months ago, bro. He is by far one of my top 5 like all-time favorite content creators, and he just disappeared. And he did like one Instagram update like a couple of weeks ago, and that's it. Like he doesn't respond on Reddit or anything. He's just gone up in smoke, man. I'm kind of worried about him. Either way, fantastic video. And those type of things are the things I want to know more about. Because China probably buries a lot of like these type of horrendous stories around, you know, the public perception of the country and not wanting the media to spread like false narratives and whatnot. So they put a pretty solid lid on this type of things. Damn, dude.